Smart automation, better business. Learn how to optimize your business with Solved.
Welcome back to the Solve YouTube channel, your go-to source for Revenue Cloud learnings. I'm Jared Christensen, and I am a certified Salesforce consultant specializing in Revenue Cloud and implementing Revenue Cloud for fast-growing teams. So in this video, we're going to be talking about how to map from the order to the contract inside Revenue Cloud. So if you're like me and you're coming from CPQ, this is all pretty new territory with context definitions and making mappings there. And so I'm going to walk through that process so that when you have fields on the order that you need to map over to the contract, you know how to do that in your Revenue Cloud org. All right, so if you saw our previous video on mapping from the quote to the order, then you should have seen how we mapped installation date from the quote object through the context definition for your sales transaction, through the quote entities mapping to the sales transaction node, from that node through the order entities mapping to the order. And then in order to map from the order to the contract, we need to do somewhat of a bit more complex mapping where we're going to map from the order through the order to contract SI sales transaction mapping to the sales transaction node, from that node to the contract node through the contact to sales transaction mapping, and then from the contract node to the contract Salesforce object through the contract node map. So mouthful there, but we're going to walk through it. So hopefully you've been following along. If not, make sure to go check out that video on mapping from the quote to order, as well as the other videos about mapping from, like, for example, the quote line to order product and so on. So let's jump in. So jumping over to Salesforce, first make sure you have your field set up on the order and the contract that you want to map to. So for example, I'm mapping this installation date field on the order to this date field called installed date. And so just wanted to highlight here that you don't need to have the same API name. For those of you like me, again, coming from CPQ, this is a lot more flexible. We don't have to have the same API name. It is a little bit harder to set up than twin fields and CPQ, but more flexible. So let's jump into how we are going to do this. We're going to go to setup and make sure you go to your currently active and used version of the sales transaction context definition. So this is your extended version of the sales transaction context definition that you're using in your active pricing procedures. And once we're here, we're going to click edit and we're going to add attributes on the contract node as well as the sales transaction node. So I've already done this, but looking here, if I come to the sales transaction, I should be able to see, a attribute for installation date, input, output, date type in this case. And then on the contract object, I should be able to see that installation date attribute. Again, this does not need to match the field name, input and output, and it's a date type. So once you've done that, you'll come here and make sure you add a tag for those. So for the contract, again, an attribute that you made, as well as the sales transaction attribute that you created. Make sure you have tags for them. And then click save. And then our next step again is mapping from the order to the sales transaction node. In order to do that, we are going to go to the order to contract SI's transaction mapping. So coming here, you're going to find the order to contract SI's transaction mapping. And now that I'm looking at it, this is probably an L, so sales transaction map. And we're coming to that mapping where we are going to map on the left side the sales transaction to, on the right side, the order. So a little bit counterintuitive there. When I first saw this, I thought that I should have been mapping from the order on the left side to the sales transaction on the right side, but make sure you don't mess that up. We want to map from the sales transaction to the order. So I'm going to come here and find my attribute that I made on the sales transaction. And then here on the order, find my field for installation date and map that. All right, and then I'm going to click save. And then on the contract to sales transaction mapping, I'm going to map from sales transaction to contract. So again, on the context definition, find that mapping, and we're going to go to the contract sales transaction mapping, and we're going to map, and it looks like I already did that here, from the contract on the left side to the sales transaction on the right side. And you're going to map. If you haven't already mapped the node, you'll need to map the node first. And once you map the node, then you should be able to map the attribute that you created on the contract to the attribute that you created on the sales transaction. If nothing is showing up here on the right side, then you will want to make sure you have added the sales transaction context definition that you're currently using to the right side. All right, so once we have that mapping, then we're going to come back and we're going to map from the contract node to the contract object using the contract node mapping. So here you're going to find the contract node mapping, and again, you're going to come here and click edit as object mapping and then map. And that's going to get you here, where on the left side, you're going to find your contract node. And on the right side, you're going to find the contract object, and you're going to map your field. So here I've already mapped the installation date field here to the installed date. Again, that was a differently spelt name to show that it will still work. Mapping from the contract node on the left to the contract object on the right. As always, thanks for watching. If this was helpful, please make sure you like and subscribe, and go check out our other videos on Revenue Cloud and other Salesforce topics. Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching. We can't wait to help you automate your business. Please like, comment, or subscribe for more.